Doop, doop, doop. Ba-da-bum-bum. So, come on in here. You could do it with a beverage or without a beverage. This time, it's going to work just about the same. Hello, first day on Periscope. Welcome. Huh? What? Have you all seen the latest tweet from President Trump? I'll read the tweet for those of you who either haven't seen it yet or perhaps would like a more dramatic reading. All right, so this is 41 minutes ago, fresh off the press. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, tweets, pause. I'm going to try to actually read this without laughing because it'll be better. I don't know if I could do it. While not at all presidential, oh, he had me at while not at all presidential. All right, I'm going. While not at all presidential, I must... Oh, God. While not at all presidential, I must point out that the sloppy Michael Moore show on Broadway was a total bomb, in all caps, and was forced to close. Sad. Oh, my God. Is he having the most fun week of his life? You know what you can do when you're president and the GDP is 3% and ISIS is hiding? Oh, God. I feel so sorry for the 30% of the country who was born without a sense of humor, because I know they don't think this is funny, but it's freaking hilarious. Well, let's break this down a little bit. You know, it's funny. I was going to do a Periscope on a topic that this fits into so perfectly that I decided not to wait. So for those of you who are a little bit older and you remember tennis in the old days, there was a number one tennis player in the world was John McEnroe. Now, the thing that made McEnroe famous was not just that he was an amazing tennis player, it actually still is, I think at age 50, whatever, but he was famous for arguing line calls and having tantrums on the field, and he'd throw his racket, and he'd get in people's faces, and he'd get kicked out of matches. And the first few times you saw it, you would say to yourself, that is ruining the game of tennis. The game of tennis that I know, we wear white all over. We go to the country club and we do not argue with the umpire. We do not. So then comes John McEnroe, and he just does everything you're not supposed to do. They're just this terrible behavior. And all experts would tell you, well, don't be like that because it's going to hurt your performance as well as your reputation. It's like there's nothing good can come from these, calling all the attention to yourself and sucking all the energy out of the room and being on the news every night and being the most famous tennis player who ever lived. Nothing good can come from that. But of course, it helped his game. There's pretty clear evidence, at least anecdotally, if you watched, that it looked like it was helping him. So he managed to turn it into something good. But here's the part I wanted to get to. The evolution of John McEnroe was from the ultimate bad boy, just bastard on the field who said and did, the things you're not supposed to do, to, in his aging years. I won't say aging because he's in great shape. He's probably like a 20-year-old's body. But he learned to turn that reputation into just part of the act. Now when he plays on the senior circuit, he actually does an intentional, argument with the ref or with his opponent at least once a match, because that's why people go. It's now just part of the act. And I was watching the video some of you saw of, put this on. I don't know why nobody said your microphone's too far away. But I was watching the video footage of the Halloween shot in the Oval Office yesterday, and it was the children of the reporters who cover the White House. So because it's the children of the reporters, the president, of course, had to make some jokes about, fake news. I don't know if he used those words, but he started just sort of kidding the children about their dads, right, and their moms. So they're sort of making fun of the kids for their parents. And he had this whole thing going on. And once again, it seemed like a little awkward, like a little bit, inappropriate, maybe a little bit over the line. But it has now become just part of the act, all right? You would be disappointed if he stopped acting like that. I mean, I know I would. Nobody's died from it. Like McEnroe, the game of tennis survived, but I guess the only difference was we got to wear more interesting clothes. It loosened up a little bit. So there is something interesting happening just about now, which is that the president has enough success going. The ISIS is good, and he's got his courts, and the economy is good, and maybe he'll get a tax cut. He's having a good few weeks, and the Russia thing's falling apart and is blowing up in the Democrats' face, and so he's just having this really good week, and he's now transitioning, because this is a perfect time to do it, into making it, instead of that crazy guy that you're afraid is going to blow up the world, to just sort of the act. So when you see this. When you see this tweet, it's so fantastically self-aware that if you were wondering how much of this was an act, I think you can stop wondering now. All right. Here's a little factoid you didn't know. You'll have to fact check me on this, but I think it's true. I believe that President Trump's first choice as a college major was theater. You have to fact check me on that, but I think that's actually true. And he has merged reality TV and theater and politics perfectly. I don't think it'll ever be done again, because it would take a certain kind of personality. But I'll read the tweet again. While not at all presidential, I must point out that the this is all capitalized, sloppy Michael Moore show on Broadway was a total bomb and was forced to close. Sad. So at this point, he's had such a good week, especially with the 3% GDP. Forget about, the fact that Obama, had more to do with it than the president does. He didn't break anything. His optimism is probably improving things. He probably is accelerating it. And at this point, it's hard to argue that he doesn't have a positive effect on the economy. But now he's just like, he's just going around bayoneting the survivors, and so he's. If you think about it, what's one of the worst things that happened to him this week? One of the worst things that happened to President Trump, like in the real world, forget about the rumor world and the things that think are true, but in the real world, there were two senators who gave us a whole lot of theater because they were all on the cast, and in the end, they all agreed that they're going to vote whatever the president wants them to vote for, because that's going to be the Republican plan. All right. So there was absolutely nothing lost except these two people gave us some entertainment, and then they're going to vote for the president's plans. That was his worst problem. All right. So let's evaluate this linguistic kill shot, the sloppy Michael Moore show. So it's ambiguous whether he's saying that the sloppy part is Michael Moore or the sloppy part is the sloppy Michael Moore show. So I'm not sure if he's calling Moore sloppy or the show sloppy, but I guess in both. So that's good. Now remember I told you that sloppy So this has all the elements of his successful linguistic kill shots. Number one, he uses a word that's uncommon in this context. The context being the president. Now he calls it out and says, "Well, not at all presidential." Oh God, that's funny. He uses a word sloppy that you're not going to hear a president refer to anybody as sloppy. It's just not done. So that's perfect because you can't stop thinking, well, that's not done. Then the second thing is that he uses descriptions of things that are going to be reinforced in the future. But this one is even better because now every time, think about this, Michael Moore is one of the biggest, most vocal, and I would say successful critics of President Trump, and has for a long, long time, right? So Michael Moore has been this thorn in his side for a long, long time. But so not only does the president get to dance on the grave of his Broadway show, which must have given him much satisfaction, but by branding him Sloppy Michael Moore, wait for it, the best part's coming. By branding him Sloppy Michael Moore and making it instantly his forever name, because it did, that's now his forever name, at least with half of the country. Every time Michael Moore gets dressed, he's going to hear the president's tweet in his head. And he's going to think to himself, he's going to be doing this. Hold on a second. This is how Michael Moore used to get dressed. Done. So this was the old way. The new way, he would still like to do it this way. But this is how Michael Moore will get dressed for the rest of his life. No, I can't do that. No, I'm going out like this because I'm staying true. That does look a little sloppy. That is Michael Moore getting dressed for the rest of his life. Did I say Michael Moore? I meant Sloppy Michael Moore. All right. This is so true, it's sick. So what did you need more than anything else in the world for the president that most of you are supporting, I'm guessing, if you're here on this Periscope? What did you need more than anything? You needed for him to reveal the practical joke. The 2-year practical joke, which has been that only half the country gets in on the joke, right? All of his tweets have been this tweet. Let me say it again. This one is so obviously a joke. And by the way, he pointed it out with his first line, while not at all presidential. This is so obviously for humor that it makes you like the end of The Sixth Sense, where you think back of all the other tweets. Because the first few you saw, in the beginning when he was doing things that seemed over the line, you'd say to yourself, is he crazy? Why is he doing that? Wait, is he stupid? Does he have a brain defect? Is he just mean? Does he have no soul? And here's your answer. It's what I've been telling you for 2 years, and it's what my book Win Bigly will tell you more about. It was always for the laughs. It just happened to be really effective because the people who are in on the joke really, really bond to him over this. I mean, if you thought this was funny, and I'm going to acknowledge that half the country doesn't, all right? Half of the country does not think this is funny. But half of the country just bonded to their president a little bit more. That's sort of the only half he needs, because the others weren't gonna move anyway. Now, think about, this is another thing I keep pointing out. When people say, yeah, he's crazy, random, everything he does is spontaneous, and therefore there's no thought involved. That his critics believe he's the first human being who was born without the ability to imagine the impact of his next thought. Like he's the only one. That's never happened before. He's like some kind of weird genetic miracle where he actually does things, and then after he's done them, he can say, oh, I guess I did something there. That's actually what his critics think, as opposed to actually thinking what he's going to do and then doing it. And here we see, he sort of pulled the curtain back a little bit on this one. This one was a little too obvious. But anyway, one of the things I say is that his inappropriateness almost always stays within a narrow band of inappropriateness, where this would be too much and this wouldn't be interesting. But that narrow band of inappropriateness, that's just what makes you, unable to look away. And imagine you were sitting down to come up with your new nickname for Michael Moore. Most of you, and it's true, most of you would have gone for an overweight joke. You would have used the F word, right? You would have said, Fat Michael Moore. And you would have said to yourself, congratulations, look how clever I am. I have called him this name. Here's what's wrong with that. 60% of the president's base are overweight, right? He's not going to call a voter overweight when he's got his own weight problem, all right? He's got a few extra pounds. He looks thinner, by the way. It looks like he's losing. But it would have been the biggest political mistake ever to call him fat, right? It wouldn't have been funny. It would have felt personal to the people reading the tweet. They'd be like, I've got a couple extra pounds. It doesn't feel good to me. But when you say sloppy, very few people think of themselves as sloppy, even if they are, right? People think, I'm messy sometimes, I leave things around. But sloppy is kind of a word, I don't know, has anyone ever called themselves sloppy except in a joking way? Like, you might say, I have sloppy handwriting or something like that. And sloppy is one of those words that just sounds funny. Sloppy. It's hard not to say sloppy after you hear it. Tell somebody, read this tweet, the president's tweet. Try this experiment. Someone who hasn't heard the tweet, read it to them, and then watch how long it takes for them to use the word sloppy back to you in some kind of a sentence. You cannot not use that word. You hear the word sloppy, and you're going to go, at least, sloppy. You called him sloppy. Sloppy Michael Moore. You just can't get it out of your head. It's like the stickiest word ever. And then the other quality of the president's linguistic kill shots is that they have a physical element to it. So he needed the physical element, but didn't want to go after weight because that's a little bit too far. That's actually a lot too far in my opinion. But sloppy is going to remind you of him every time you see it. You will never see Michael Moore again for the rest of his or your life, whichever is shorter, I guess, and without thinking of that. Now, I'm also loving the fact that this JFK stuff came out. Has there ever been a more perfect president to be a sitting president for releasing this hornet's nest of conspiracy theories about something that doesn't matter at all? The JFK stuff. The JFK stuff is sort of news, but not really. I mean, it's so old, it's not really news. Check his Twitter. Whose Twitter? Oh. Oh, he just tweeted all the files are released way ahead of schedule. All right. He stopped the release. Well, I don't have any problem with people stopping just to make sure they've checked everything. To me, there's nothing nefarious about a delay. That's just every bureaucracy in the world. Everything except for names of those still alive. Does Michael Moore have a response tweet? Well, that's a good question. Do you think there's anything that Michael Moore can say that won't make this just worse for Michael Moore? I don't think so. He was revealing it personally. Thoughts on Carter tweet? I don't know which tweet. Do you believe Oswald acted alone? Yes. I mean, I could be talked out of it, but I haven't seen anything that would yet. Which is not to say there aren't plenty of pieces of evidence that are questionable. It's just that it's a strange world, and strange things are sort of routine, and coincidences are routine. What about Don Jr.'s tweet? You mean in general, or I don't know what one you're talking about. Carter saying that the press was overly critical of Trump. Yeah, I think that got people's attention. It's funny because when the Democrats talk about moral leadership, who has better credentials than Jimmy Carter? Now, you could argue all day long about the effectiveness of his presidency. But it's hard to argue against the moral authority that he has earned over his life, in lots of different ways, right? From Habitat to Humanity to his religious stuff to the way he was president. So it would be hard to argue a more authoritative moral voice for the left. And to hear him come out and say, yeah, the press has actually been too hard on President Trump is... It might be persuasive. I didn't see Roger Stone flip out. Did I predict who's getting indicted? Well, I don't have any predictions that are any more insightful than what I read or what I hear on the news. So, everybody's thinking it's Manafort or Flynn, and I don't have any reason to doubt that, but I also have no reason to think it's right. Stone's Twitter is shut down. Oh, he was banned for Twitter for... I don't suppose you can tell me what Roger Stone said, right? Because if you said it, you would get banned as well. Is there anybody who can give me a hint what he said? Without actually saying it. He freaked over Mueller. Rant about CNN. He blew apart Don Lemon. Said someone was dumb. Okay. So it really was about profanity directed at real people. Oh, the problem was that wasn't just... Okay, I get it. So you understand that the real problem here is not that he used profanity, and probably not so much that he went after somebody with profanity. It's that the specific profanity got to sexual orientation, and that would be over the line for sure. Yeah, I mean, a 3-hour timeout for that comment, that feels about right to me. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. You know. Less vulgar. All right, well, I'm not interested in more Don Lemon stuff, but in any event, I think I said what I wanted to say, and so I will sign off for now. Remember, don't win small if you can win bigly.